June 5th, 1944. 23:47 hours. Dover, England. Rain lashes against the blackout curtains of a requisitioned seaside villa. Inside, a radio operator adjusts his headphones, sweat running beneath the rim of his helmet. The room smells of damp wool and cigarette smoke. Outside, the channel churns black and violent. A coded transmission clicks through the static. He doesn't look up. He writes, across the narrow water. In a concrete bunker near Pas-de-Calais, a German signals. Officer leans closer to his receiver. The Luftwaffe liaison stand behind him, boots polished, expression unreadable. The message is intercepted, logged, stamped, rushed upward through layers of command. Another report confirming troop concentrations in southeast England. Another hint that General George S. Patton is preparing something massive. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler sleeps. But his intelligence map is already bleeding red pins along the French coast. Not at Normandy, at Calais. And that changes everything. You are standing in the dark before the greatest amphibious invasion in history. But the battle for D-Day did not begin with landing craft. It began with whispers, with ghosts. Months earlier, Allied planners understood one brutal truth. Storming Fortress Europe head-on would be suicide if Germany concentrated its armored divisions at the landing site. The Atlantic Wall stretched from Norway to Spain. Concrete casemates. Interlocking machine gun fields. 88mm artillery. Minefields thick as forests. The only way to survive the first 24 hours was to control what the enemy believed. Enter Operation Fortitude. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, known simply as ATF, built a lie so large it required an army to sustain it. Not a metaphorical army. A real one, on paper. The first U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, commanded by Lieutenant General George S. Patton. To German intelligence, Patton was the Allies' most aggressive field commander. He had torn through Sicily. He had slapped soldiers and demanded advance at any cost. Berlin considered him reckless, dangerous, decisive. If there was to be a main assault, surely Patton would lead it. So the Allies gave Hitler what he expected. Along the coast of Kent and Sussex, inflatable Sherman tanks bloomed across fields like gray rubber beasts. Dummy landing craft lined the Thames estuary. Wooden aircraft sat on fake runways. Engineers hammered together plywood headquarters. From the air, reconnaissance photographs showed buildup. From intercepted chatter, radio traffic exploded with coded signals. Entire Phantom divisions spoke constantly across the spectrum. Logistics units requested supplies. Quartermasters filed reports. Movement orders shifted invisible battalions. The British double-cross system fed carefully crafted intelligence through turned German spies. Every scrap reinforced the illusion. The decisive invasion would strike Pas-de-Calais, the shortest route across the Channel. The logical choice. German High Command believed it. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt studied aerial reconnaissance and concluded Calais was the obvious target. Even Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, tasked with defending the Atlantic Wall, strengthened Normandy, but remained convinced the main blow would fall elsewhere, because it made sense. And war at its highest level often obeys logic. That was a trap. While Fortitude South projected Patton's ghost army toward Calais, the real invasion force assembled farther west. Operation Neptune, the naval component of Overlord, gathered nearly 7,000 vessels. Landing ships, destroyers, battleships, minesweepers. More than 150,000 Allied troops prepared to cross the Channel in a single night. In airfields across southern England, paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions checked their gear. See, 47 transports lined up wingtip to wingtip. Pilots studied maps marked with French hedgerows and river crossings. Yet even as engines warmed, the deception continued. Patton made public appearances in southeast England. His presence was carefully photographed. German agents reported his movements. Phantom supply dumps appeared fuller each week. Rail lines were crowded with invisible traffic. The illusion gained weight. By early June, German 15th Army, stationed at Pas-de-Calais, stood ready. 20 divisions, including powerful panzer formations, waited for an invasion that had not yet come. Meanwhile, in Normandy, defenses were thinner, not weak. never weak, but stretched. On the night of June 5th, storms delayed the Allied fleet. Meteorologists warned of a narrow window. Eisenhower faced commanders in a cramped room at Southwick House. The decision hung in the air like humidity before lightning. Okay, let's go. The order was given. But even then, the success of D-Day rested on a fragile hope that Hitler would hesitate, that he would cling to the belief that Normandy was a diversion, because the Ghost Army was about to face its greatest test. And in the early hours of June 6th, when the first Allied paratroopers dropped into darkness over St. Miraglisse, the deception would either hold or collapse. June 6, 1944, 2:18 hours. Near St. Miraglisse, Normandy, the night rips open with the drone of Pratt and Whitney engines. See, 47 Skitrans cut through low cloud, their fuselages trembling under flak bursts that bloom like black flowers in the sky. Red jump lights flicker inside the cabins. Paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions stand hooked to static lines, boots planted wide against turbulence. Sweat runs beneath camouflage face paint. Green light, they step into nothing. Silk snaps open against tracer fire. Men descend through smoke and confusion, landing in flooded fields, orchards, churchyards. Some drown under the weight of equipment. Others cut free and run, assembling in the dark by cricket clickers and whispered passwords. Their mission is simple on paper. Seize causeways, secure bridges, disrupt German reinforcement routes toward the beaches. But paper plans dissolve quickly in combat. In Normandy, German sentries report parachutes drifting across the hedgerows. Telephone lines crackle. A battalion commander assumes it is a limited raid. Diversionary tactics are expected before the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Reports move up the chain, cautious, fragmented. At 3:30 hours, coastal radar stations detect an enormous armada approaching the Cotentin Peninsula. Operators blink at their scopes. The signals are overwhelming. Naval bombardment begins soon after. The battleships USS Nevada and HMS Warspite unleash thunder that shakes concrete bunkers. Still, uncertainty lingers inside German headquarters. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt receives word of airborne landings and heavy naval activity off Normandy. He demands clarity. Is this an invasion or a feint? The answer matters because armored divisions cannot move without authorization from the very top. And at this hour, Adolf Hitler is asleep at the Berghof. His aides hesitate to wake him. They have been trained not to disturb the Führer without certainty. And certainty is exactly what they do not have. The deception of Operation Fortitude continues to exert pressure like an invisible hand. German intelligence summaries still insist that the 1st U.S. Army Group under Lieutenant General George S. Patton remains positioned in southeast England. Intercepted radio traffic from fusag hums with activity. Supply requisitions movement orders, coded chatter all suggest imminent action at Pas-de-Calais. To German analysts, Normandy feels wrong. Too obvious. Too distant from England's narrowest crossing. By dawn, the beaches ignite. Utah, Omaha, gold. Juneau, sword. Landing craft grind toward shore through heavy surf. Machine gun fire slices across open ramps. At Omaha, the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions suffer catastrophic losses. In the first wave, men drop before reaching the shingle. Naval gunfire struggles to suppress fortified positions of the German 352nd Infantry Division. Yet even amid the carnage, something extraordinary happens. German 15th Army, positioned at Pas-de-Calais, does not move. 20 divisions remain fixed in place, waiting for the main assault. Their commanders are convinced Normandy is a secondary operation designed to draw forces away from Calais. In Normandy, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is absent, having returned to Germany for his wife's birthday. Several panzer divisions sit inland, awaiting release authority that has not been granted. Every hour matters. At 7 o'clock hours, Rundstedt requests permission to deploy armored reserves. The answer is delayed. Hitler must decide personally. The Führer finally awakens late in the morning. By then, Allied troops have secured footholds on multiple beaches. Air superiority is absolute. The Luftwaffe barely appears. Allied fighter bombers patrol roads and rail lines, striking any sign of movement. Hitler studies reports and clings to his conviction: Normandy is a diversion. The real invasion will strike Pas-de-Calais once German reserves commit elsewhere. He refuses to release full panzer strength northward. That hesitation is not dramatic. It is administrative. It is paperwork. It is a signature withheld. But in war, delay can be fatal. Throughout June 6th and into June 7th, Allied forces push inland, linking beachheads. Engineers clear obstacles. Artillery is brought ashore. Supply dumps begin forming on fragile sand. Casualties are horrific, but momentum builds. Meanwhile, the Ghost Army continues its performance. Phantom radio signals intensify around Kent. Fake headquarters generate traffic implying Patton's army is still poised to strike. Double agents feed Berlin reassurances that Normandy is merely phase one of a broader deception. German high command waits for the second blow. It never comes. By the time realization dawns, Allied forces have established a lodgment too large to dislodge easily. The window to crush the invasion on the beaches has closed. All because a phantom army convinced Hitler to wait. But deception alone does not win campaigns. The battle for Normandy is only beginning. And as June stretches into July, the hedgerows will swallow men whole, turning every field into a fortress. The Allies have secured a foothold. Now they must survive it. June 6, 1944, 2:18 hours. Near St. Mere-Église, Normandy, the night rips open with the drone of Pratt and Whitney engines. See, 47 Skitrans cut through low cloud, their fuselages trembling under flak bursts that bloom like black flowers in the sky. Red jump lights flicker inside the cabins. Paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions stand hooked to static lines, boots planted wide against turbulence. Sweat runs beneath camouflage face paint. Green light, they step into nothing. Silk snaps open against tracer fire. Men descend through smoke and confusion, landing in flooded fields, orchards, churchyards. Some drown under the weight of equipment. Others cut free and run, assembling in the dark by cricket clickers and whispered passwords. Their mission is simple on paper: seize causeways, secure bridges, disrupt German reinforcement routes toward the beaches. But paper plans dissolve quickly in combat. In Normandy, German sentries report parachutes drifting across the hedgerows. Telephone lines crackle. A battalion commander assumes it is a limited raid. Diversionary tactics are expected before the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Reports move up the chain, cautious, fragmented. At 3:30 hours, coastal radar stations detect an enormous armada approaching the Cotentin Peninsula. Operators blink at their scopes. The signals are overwhelming. Naval bombardment begins soon after. The battleships USS Nevada and HMS Warspite unleash thunder that shakes concrete bunkers. Still, uncertainty lingers inside German headquarters. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt receives word of airborne landings and heavy naval activity off Normandy. He demands clarity. Is this an invasion or a feint? The answer matters because armored divisions cannot move without authorization from the very top. And at this hour, Adolf Hitler is asleep at the Berghof. His aides hesitate to wake him. They have been trained not to disturb the Führer without certainty. And certainty is exactly what they do not have. The deception of Operation Fortitude continues to exert pressure like an invisible hand. German intelligence summaries still insist that the 1st U.S. Army Group under Lieutenant General George S. Patton remains positioned in southeast England. Intercepted radio traffic from Fusag hums with activity. Supply requisitions, movement orders, coded chatter all suggest imminent action at Pas-de-Calais. To German analysts, Normandy feels wrong. Too obvious. Too distant from England's narrowest crossing. By dawn, the beaches ignite. Utah, Omaha, gold. Juneau, sword. Landing craft grind towards shore through heavy surf. Machine gun fire slices across open ramps. At Omaha, the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions suffer catastrophic losses. In the first wave, men drop before reaching the shingle. Naval gunfire struggles to suppress fortified positions of the German 352nd Infantry Division. Yet even amid the carnage, something extraordinary happens. German 15th Army, positioned at Pas-de-Calais, does not move. 20 divisions remain fixed in place, waiting for the main assault. Their commanders are convinced Normandy is a secondary operation designed to draw forces away from Calais. In Normandy, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is absent, having returned to Germany for his wife's birthday. Several panzer divisions sit inland, awaiting release authority that has not been granted. Every hour matters. At 7 o'clock hours, Rundstedt requests permission to deploy army reserves. The answer is delayed. Hitler must decide personally. The Führer finally awakens late in the morning. By then, Allied troops have secured footholds on multiple beaches. Air superiority is absolute. The Luftwaffe barely appears. Allied fighter bombers patrol roads and rail lines, striking any sign of movement. Hitler studies reports and clings to his conviction: Normandy is a diversion. The real invasion will strike Pas-de-Calais once German reserves commit elsewhere. He refuses to release full panzer strength northward. That hesitation is not dramatic. It is administrative. It is paperwork. It is a signature withheld. But in war, delay can be fatal. Throughout June 6th and into June 7th, Allied forces push inland, linking beachheads. Engineers clear obstacles. Artillery is brought ashore. Supply dumps begin forming on fragile sand. Casualties are horrific, but momentum builds. Meanwhile, the Ghost Army continues its performance. Phantom radio signals intensify around Kent. Fake headquarters generate traffic, implying Patton's army is still poised to strike. Double agents feed Berlin reassurances that Normandy is merely phase one of a broader deception. German high command waits for the second blow. It never comes. By the time realization dawns, Allied forces have established a lodgment too large to dislodge easily. The window to crush the invasion on the beaches has closed. All because a phantom army convinced Hitler to wait. But deception alone does not win campaigns. The battle for Normandy is only beginning. And as June stretches into July, the hedgerows will swallow men whole, turning every field into a fortress. The Allies have secured a foothold. Now they must survive it. July 25th, 1944, 9:38 hours. Near Saint-Lô, Normandy, the sky darkens not with storm clouds, but with aircraft. More than 3,000 Allied bombers roll in waves across the German front. 17 flying fortresses in 24 liberators release their payloads in calculated grids. The ground erupts in sheets of fire and pulverized earth. Operation Cobra has begun. From foxholes carved into the hedgerows, American infantry feel the shock waves punch through their ribs. Some bombs fall short. Friendly casualties mount in the chaos. Smoke blankets the battlefield, so thicket blots out the sun. When the bombardment finally lifts, silence lasts only seconds. Then the artillery opens. U.S. 7 Corps surges forward. Sherman tanks fitted with rhino cutters smash through shattered bocage, engines roaring. Infantry follow in tight formations, rifles up, bayonets fixed. German defensive lines, already stunned by aerial assault, begin to fracture. Communication lines lie buried under craters. Officers scramble to re-establish command. The German 7th Army is bleeding. In Berlin, situation maps grow crowded with alarming arrows. Reports from Normandy speak of penetrations, withdrawals, collapsing units. Yet Adolf Hitler still refuses to concede that the decisive battle is unfolding there. He believes a true invasion remains imminent at Pas-de-Calais. German 15th Army stays anchored north, guarding empty beaches. Panzer divisions that might counter Cobra remain idle or slow to redeploy. Orders are issued, countermanded, rewritten. Confusion spreads through the command structure. On the ground, the breakthrough accelerates. Within 48 hours, American forces punch a hole wide enough to pour mechanized divisions through. The terrain opens beyond the hedgerows into rolling countryside more suitable for maneuver warfare. General Omar Bradley recognizes the moment. He activates Lieutenant General George S. Patton's Third Army. The Ghost steps onto the stage. Patton, once the commander of Phantom Formation designed to deceive German intelligence, now leads a very real armored force racing across France. His columns of M4 Sherman's half-tracks and supply trucks surge south and west with startling speed. The psychological reversal is almost poetic. For months, German analysts watched Patton's non-existent army across the Channel. Now his actual divisions carve through Brittany and toward the Loire. German units attempt to regroup around Mortain in early August, launching a desperate counteroffensive known as Operation Luttich. Panthers and Tigers strike toward Avranches, seeking to sever the American corridor. For a moment, the advance wavers. But Allied air superiority intervenes. P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoons dive repeatedly into German columns trapped on narrow roads. Rockets streak downward. Bombs detonate among armored vehicles unable to disperse under constant surveillance. The counterattack collapses under relentless air assault. With the corridor secured, Allied forces pivot eastward, aiming to encircle large portions of German Army Group B. The trap begins to form near Falaise. Canadian, British, and American units converge slowly, grinding through resistance that refuses to dissolve quietly. The Falaise pocket tightens day by day. German soldiers attempt breakout under cover of darkness. Vehicles jam roads clogged with wreckage and dead horses. Artillery rains down on columns caught in open fields. The air smells of burning fuel and decay. By late August, the pocket closes. Tens of thousands of German troops are killed or captured. Equipment litters the countryside in grotesque abundance. What began as a precarious beachhead 2 months earlier has transformed into a sweeping liberation. Paris lies ahead, and still, Hitler's earlier hesitation echoes through every decision. The refusal to commit reserves immediately on June 6 allowed the Allied foothold to solidify. The insistence on guarding Pas de Calais long after Normandy proved decisive drain flexibility from German strategy. Operation Fortitude's illusion lingered long enough to distort reality. War often hinges on firepower. Sometimes it hinges on timing. In this case, it hinged on belief. By August 25, 1944, Paris is liberated. French civilians flood the streets as Free French forces enter the city. The Western Front, once locked in stalemate, now moves with relentless momentum toward Germany itself. Yet the cost has been staggering. Allied casualties in Normandy exceed 200,000. German losses are even higher. The fields of France bear scars that will not fade quickly. The Ghost Army never fired a shot, but its presence shaped every shot that followed. And as Allied forces advance toward the Rhine, the question lingers. What happens when deception no longer shields you, and the enemy fights with nothing left to lose? September 4th, 1944. 11:12 hours. Pas de Calais, France. The wind whips across empty beaches where German coastal batteries still stare out toward the Channel. Concrete casemates remain manned. Machine guns are cleaned. Artillery crews stand ready. They are waiting for an invasion that has already passed them by. Even after the breakout from Normandy, even after Paris has fallen, elements of the German 15th Army remain stationed here. Their maps still show arrows pointing from southeast England toward Calais. The phantom threat lingers like a fever that refuses to break. Operation Fortitude did not end on June 6. It evolved. Allied intelligence officers continued transmitting radio traffic from the fictitious 1st U.S. Army Group. Phantom logistics requests move through the ether. Agents controlled by Britain's double-cross system feed Berlin carefully ration updates, suggesting that Patton's forces remain poised for a secondary landing. The deception persists because it must. Every German division pinned in place at Calais is a division not confronting Allied armor racing across northern France. By early September, Allied columns stretch supply lines to their limit. Red Ball Express convoys roar along French roads day and night, hauling fuel, ammunition, and rations forward in a desperate effort to maintain momentum. Tanks sit idle for lack of gasoline. Infantry advance ahead of artillery support. Speed has become both advantage and vulnerability. German high command begins to grasp the scale of the disaster in Normandy, but the shadow of Calais still shapes their calculus. Hitler's fixation on a second invasion remains stubborn. He fears that stripping the coast entirely could invite catastrophe. So units stay. Weeks after the decisive battle has shifted eastward, German troops guard bunkers facing an empty horizon. The psychological weight of deception is immense. For months, intelligence briefings reinforce a narrative that made strategic sense. Calais was logical. Calais was close. Calais was predictable. When evidence contradicted that narrative, it was dismissed as misdirection. Confirmation bias hardened into doctrine. Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army barrels toward the German border. His armored columns sweep through Reims and Verdun. Prisoners flood rear areas. Yet fuel shortages slow the advance just as German resistance stiffens near the Siegfried Line. The Western Front enters a new phase. What began as a desperate beachhead operation now becomes a race against logistics and winter. Still, the Ghost Army's influence lingers in unexpected ways. German commanders in the Netherlands and northern France hesitate to redeploy fully, wary of leaving coastal sectors exposed. Allied planners exploit this by launching Operation Market Garden in mid-September, attempting to seize bridges across the Rhine. The gamble falters under fierce resistance, but underscores a fluid nature of deception and momentum. War is rarely linear. In October, as Allied forces consolidate along Germany's western defenses, Fortitude's mechanisms gradually wind down. Radio traffic diminishes. Dummy installations are dismantled. The inflatable tanks deflate quietly in English fields. The ghost dissolves, but its work is done. Historians will later debate how decisive the deception truly was. Some argue German forces would have struggled to repel D-Day regardless. Others point to specific armored divisions that remained north far too long. The truth lies in the cumulative effect of doubt. Doubt slows decision-making. Doubt fragments coordination. Doubt buys time. And time was the one commodity the Allies required most on June 6th and the weeks that followed. By December 1944, Germany attempts one final massive counteroffensive in the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge erupts under snow and surprise. Hitler concentrates his remaining armored strength in a last gamble to split Allied lines. There's no deception this time, only brute force. Yet even in this climactic struggle, the earlier strategic erosion is evident. Divisions that might have been stronger months earlier have been drained by attrition sustained during the delayed response to Normandy. The Ghost's earlier manipulation of reserves cannot be undone. When the Western Front finally collapses in the spring of 1945, Allied troops cross the Rhine and drive deep into Germany. The Third Reich fractures from east and west simultaneously. The beaches of Calais never see the invasion they guarded against. Instead, they stand as silent monuments to one of the most ambitious deception campaigns in military history. No medals are pinned on inflatable tanks. No parades celebrate fan divisions. Yet without them, the beaches of Normandy might have been drowned in reinforcements before Allied forces could entrench. The Ghost Army convinced the dictator to wait. And in that waiting, the fate of Western Europe shifted irrevocably. But even victory carries questions. If belief can be manipulated so completely in war, what other decisions rest not on strength, but on perception? January 15th, 1944, 18:05 hours. London, England. Rain streaks the windows of a dimly lit office inside Norfolk House. A coal fire burns low. Papers cover the table, maps layered with greased pencil markings, arrows sweeping toward France. Cigarette smoke hangs in the air, thick enough to taste. No one here carries a rifle. Yet what they decide tonight will shape the bloodshed of summer. Colonel David Strangeway stands over the map, precise, controlled. His task is audacious. Convince the German High Command that the Allies will strike at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy, not with rumors, not with a single false report, with an entire fabricated military reality. This is the London controlling section. Deception is their weapon. They study German psychology the way artillery officers study trajectory tables. Calais makes sense geographically. It is the shortest crossing from England. It offers direct routes into Belgium and Germany. Any rational strategist would choose it, so they will build a story that confirms German expectations. Operation Fortitude is divided in two. Fortitude North, suggesting a threat to Norway, and Fortitude South, the decisive effort aimed at Calais. Every element must align. Radio chatter, aerial photography, human intelligence, Logistics patterns. The illusion must breathe. Rubber tanks are not enough. The Germans possess reconnaissance aircraft, signals intercept units, and an intelligence network across Europe. The deception must withstand scrutiny at every level. Strange Ways insists on realism. Units cannot appear overnight without supply chains. They must request fuel, rations, ammunition. They must move between staging areas. Their officers must be seen. So the Allies create the first U.S. Army group, FUSAG. They assign a commander whose reputation alone adds credibility, Lieutenant General George S. Patton. After controversy in Sicily, Patton is sidelined publicly, but privately, he becomes the face of a phantom force. German spies report his presence in southeast England. They observe vehicle traffic. They note construction activity. Every observation is encouraged, subtly guided. The double-cross system becomes critical. Captured German agents in Britain are turned and fed curated intelligence. Each message reinforces the Calais narrative. None contradict it. Small truths anchor larger lies. Radio operators transmit scripted conversations across frequencies, known to be monitored by German signals intelligence. Entire divisions speak in coded bursts. Logistics units file fictional requisitions. Movement orders circulate for troops that do not exist. Across Kent, inflatable Sherman tanks are positioned in fields. From the air, they resemble armored concentrations. Dummy landing craft line the Thames estuary. Wooden aircraft populate fake airstrips. Engineers simulate tire tracks and fuel dumps. It is theater on a continental scale. Yet the deception planners understand something deeper. They are not trying to fool every German officer. They are targeting the decision-makers at the top, particularly Adolf Hitler. His worldview is rigid. He distrusts his generals. He believes in grand, decisive blows. Fortitude feeds that belief. Intelligence summaries reaching Berlin describe FUSAG as the most powerful Allied formation in England. Analysts assess Patton as the logical spearhead for a primary invasion. Calais appears inevitable. When Normandy is finally assaulted, the groundwork of months exerts pressure. Early reports from the beaches are interpreted through an existing framework. If Calais is the main objective, then Normandy must be a diversion. This cognitive trap is deliberate. Back in London, the deception team tracks German reactions through intercepted communications. Ultra decrypts reveal discussions within the German high command. They read the confusion in real time. Every confirmation strengthens their confidence, but the risk remains immense. If the Germans had shifted armored reserves immediately on June 6, the beaches might become killing grounds beyond recovery. The deception's margin for error is razor thin. War is often decided by divisions and firepower. Here, it balances on perception. When news arrives that German 15th Army remains fixed at Pas-de-Calais days after D-Day, tension inside the London controlling section releases in quiet exhalations. The ghost is holding. Weeks pass. The illusion continues. Even as Allied forces struggle in the hedgerows, German commanders hesitate to redeploy fully. The architects of the lie understand what that means. Every day of delay translates into expanded beachheads, secured supply lines, reinforced positions. They do not celebrate. They monitor. They adjust radio traffic. They maintain the narrative until the breakout from Normandy makes the truth undeniable. By then, it is too late for Germany to reverse the strategic imbalance. In the end, Operation Fortitude becomes one of the most sophisticated deception campaigns in modern military history, not because it relied on a single trick, but because it wove together psychology, intelligence, logistics, and performance into a seamless alternative reality. The Ghost Army never marched, but occupied the mind of a dictator. And sometimes, occupying a mind is enough to win the battlefield. March 19th, 1945, 14:22 hours. Near the Rhine River, western Germany. The river churns under gray skies as Allied artillery thunders from the western bank. Smoke drifts across shattered villages. Engineers assemble pontoon bridges, while infantry crouch behind embankments, rifles resting on sandbags. Across the water, German defenses thin and exhausted prepare for impact. The war that began for the Western Allies on the beaches of Normandy has rolled all the way to Germany's last natural barrier. And yet, the echo of a lie still lingers. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler studies maps that have shrunk into a patchwork of collapsing fronts. The illusion of decisive counterblows has long since eroded, but the pattern remains the same. He clings to convictions even as reality fractures. It began with Pas-de-Calais. The refusal to release armor reserves on June 6 was not merely hesitation. It was belief hardened into certainty. Fortitude did not create that rigidity. It exploited it. Now, as Allied forces prepare to cross the Rhine, the German command structure suffers from the accumulated weight of earlier misjudgments. Divisions once held in reserve have been destroyed in Normandy, attrited in the Falaise pocket, exhausted in the Ardennes. The Rhine is no longer a shield. At 1500 hours, smoke generators ignite along the riverbank. Assault boats slide into the water. Engineers paddle through machine gun fire, laying the groundwork for bridging operations. Artillery barges pound suspected strong points across the eastern shore. This is Operation Plunder. Unlike the fragile gamble of D-Day, this crossing unfolds with overwhelming superiority. Allied air power dominates the skies. Supply lines stretch unbroken from French ports to the front. The lessons of Normandy have matured into methodical execution. Yet beneath the precision lies a chain of cause and effect reaching back to deception rooms in London. If German armored divisions had crushed the beachheads in June 1944, none of this would be happening. The Rhine would remain distant. The Western Front might have stalled indefinitely. Instead, belief created delay. Delay created foothold. Foothold created momentum. As British and American troops secure bridgeheads east of the Rhine, German resistance begins to fragment. Entire units surrender. Others fight stubbornly from fortified towns. But the coherence of a unified defensive strategy is gone. In the Ruhr, Allied forces encircle hundreds of thousands of German troops. The industrial heart of Germany falls under siege. You can trace the arc backward, from the Rhine to the Ardennes, from the Ardennes to Falaise, from Falaise to the hedgerows, from the hedgerows to the beaches, and from the beaches to a phantom army that never existed. War historians will debate material factors endlessly: tank production, air superiority, industrial capacity, all decisive in their own right, but psychology shapes command decisions. In 1944, Hitler distrusted his generals yet trusted his intuition. He believed he understood Allied intentions better than his field marshals. Fortitude reinforced that belief, feeding it evidence that confirmed his expectations. When reports from Normandy contradicted the Calais narrative, they were interpreted as part of the deception he already anticipated. The trap closed not around German divisions alone, but around German thinking. By April 1945, Allied troops advanced deep into central Germany. Cities burn. Civilians flee westward ahead of the Red Army pushing from the east. The Third Reich collapses under simultaneous pressure from two fronts it can no longer balance. Inside a bunker in Berlin, Hitler issues orders to divisions that no longer exist. The pattern repeats in tragic miniature. Belief detached from reality. Command divorced from capability. On April 30th, 1945, he ends his life as Soviet forces close in. The war in Europe ends days later. On quiet beaches at Pas-de-Calais, abandoned bunkers face an indifferent sea. Rust gathers on unused artillery. Sand drifts against concrete. They were ready. They were waiting. But the invasion they prepared for never came. Instead, it landed where they did not expect it to decide the war. Deception alone did not defeat Nazi Germany. Courage, sacrifice, industry, and strategy carried immense weight. Yet without the ghost army convincing Hitler to wait, the timetable of liberation might have been rewritten in blood. The Rhine crossing is not just a tactical victory. It is a final proof that a fabricated army once bent the course of history by occupying the mind of its enemy. And when belief falters at the highest level of command, even the strongest defenses crumble. May 8, 1945, 23:01 hours. London, England. Crowds flood the streets around Whitehall. Searchlights sweep the sky in pale arcs. Church bells ring over a city that endured years of blackout and bombardment. Soldiers lean from windows. Civilians climb lampposts. The war in Europe is over. Victory in Europe Day. But long before the cheering began, before the Rhine was crossed, before Paris was liberated, a quieter battle had already tilted the scales. It was fought with typewriters, radio transmitters, canvas, rubber, and carefully timed lies. In the final months of the war, Allied intelligence officers reviewed captured German records. Interrogations of senior commanders revealed something striking. Many remained convinced, even weeks after D-Day, that a second major landing at Pas-de-Calais was imminent. Some had waited for it until August. The deception had not merely delayed a few divisions for a few days. It had frozen an entire strategic mindset during the most critical phase of the Western Front. Operation Fortitude succeeded because it understood its target. Adolf Hitler valued intuition over flexibility. He distrusted dissent. He favored bold, singular blows. The idea that the Allies would strike at the narrowest point of the channel fit his expectations perfectly. So when Normandy erupted on June 6, he saw confirmation of his theory, not contradiction. The Ghost Army did not force him to wait. It made waiting feel logical. That distinction matters. Military deception works best when it aligns with what the enemy already believes. Fortitude did not attempt to invent an implausible fantasy. It constructed a reality that felt inevitable. Inflatable tanks in Kent, dummy landing craft along the Thames, fabricated supply depots, scripted radio chatter from non-existent divisions, and at the center, George S. Patton, visible enough to validate the fiction. German aerial reconnaissance photographed the decoys. Signals intelligence intercepted the chatter. Human sources confirmed the buildup. Each layer reinforced the others. It was not one lie. It was an ecosystem of credibility. By the time Allied boots hit Omaha and Utah, the intellectual groundwork had already been laid inside the German high command. Normandy had to be a diversion because everything else pointed to Calais. The consequences rippled outward. Panzer divisions that might have counterattacked decisively were held back. The 15th Army remained north. Strategic reserves were misallocated during the narrow window when Allied forces were most vulnerable. The beaches were chaos on June 6. At Omaha, units nearly collapsed under withering fire from the 352nd Infantry Division. Casualties mounted at a rate that could have tipped the balance. A concentrated armored counterattack that afternoon might have changed history. It never materialized. Instead, hesitation stretched into hours, hours into days, days into weeks. The lodgment expanded. Supplies flowed in. Air superiority tightened. The fragile foothold became an iron grip. From there, momentum did the rest. Historians caution against simple narratives. Wars are complex systems shaped by countless variables. Industrial output, intelligence breakthroughs like air dominance, and the Soviet advance in the East all converged to crush Nazi Germany. Yet, remove fortitude from the equation, and the margin narrows dangerously. Without deception, the first 24 hours of D-Day could have unfolded differently. Reinforcements might have arrived in force. Beachheads might have been compressed or destroyed. The liberation of Western Europe might have been delayed by months, perhaps longer. Instead, a phantom formation shaped the timing of the largest amphibious invasion in history. The Ghost Army never existed in official order of battle. No medals list its casualties. No monument bears its insignia. But its impact is measured in something more enduring than recognition. It reshaped perception at the highest level of enemy command. In war, perception governs decision. Decision governs movement. Movement governs survival. Fortitude interrupted that chain at its source. As London celebrates on May 8th, the architects of deception remain largely anonymous. Their battlefield was invisible, their victory intangible. Yet the echo of their work resonates in every liberated city, every returned soldier, every family reunited after years of separation. A ghost convinced Hitler to wait. In that waiting, the Allies secured the beachheads. From those beachheads came the liberation of France, the crossing of the Rhine, and the collapse of the Third Reich. The lesson endures beyond World War II. Power is not only measured in divisions and firepower. It is measured in the ability to shape what the enemy believes is true. On June 6, 1944, the Allies appear to gamble everything on a narrow strip of sand in Normandy. In reality, they had already won the first battle months earlier. They had won it inside the mind of their enemy.